The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Another controversy could be brewing for 2016, but this time it's a Republican, not a Democrat. At the heart of it, today a deep dive into whether Texas Senator Ted Cruz is eligible to be president. It's not just an academic question. Cruz was in South Carolina over the weekend sounding an awful lot like a presidential candidate.
There is almost no limit to what this president and this administration thinks the federal government can do. We've got to get back to the U.S. Constitution. We've got to get back to limits on federal government powers. We've got to get back to our freedom. That's how we turn the country around.
Potential problem for Senator Cruz. He said he was not born in the United States. He was born in Canada. And the Constitution says, quote, no person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of the presidency. Question is, what exactly did the Founding Fathers mean by the phrase natural born? Does it mean citizenship is based on your birthplace or your parentage? Ted Cruz's mother was born and raised in Wilmington, Delaware. His father came to the U.S. from Cuba on a student visa in 1957, but didn't become a U.S. citizen until 2005. The two met in Texas before traveling to Canada, where Cruz himself was born. Cruz claims his citizenship was passed to him from his mother, and immigration law seems to back him up on that. A law in 1952 awards citizenship to children as long as one parent is a citizen. Nevertheless, questions are being asked, just as they were about President Obama, even though he was born in the United States. But of course, he wasn't even the first to face questions about his eligibility. Barry Goldwater, the Republican presidential nominee in 1964, was born in Arizona in 1909, 3 years before it had become a state. George Romney faced questions when he sought the GOP nomination in '68 because he was born to American citizens and parents in Mexico. John McCain's citizenship came under some scrutiny because he was born in the Panama Canal Zone in 36 years before Congress passed a statute covering children born to Americans working in that region. At the end of the day, the legal evidence seems to side with Cruz, but there is a gray area, and that may be all his opponents need. Joining me now is Peter Spiro. He's a law professor at Temple University and an expert in citizenship law. Professor Spiro, thank you for joining me this morning.
Glad to be with you, Chuck.
So essentially, this all comes down to defining the phrase natural born. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think it's pretty clear. So I think it's pretty clear that natural born is defined in such a way as to include everybody that has citizenship and who got it other than through naturalization. So the fact that Ted Cruz had citizenship at birth, and he clearly did under the statute that applied at the time, it's pretty clear that he qualifies as natural born.
So there's always been this confusion, and I've always assumed if you were not born in the United States, you couldn't be president of the United States. But if you're born to U.S. citizens abroad, no matter where, if they are U.S. citizens, if one of your parents is a U.S. citizen, then that should qualify as natural born?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where we are now. And it's not just a question of what the Founding Fathers thought. It's a question of how our understandings have evolved over time. So the examples that you cited in the setup, George Romney, John McCain, Barry Goldwater, all pretty clearly established that the American people are on board with somebody who was born outside of the United States but who had citizenship at birth.
And that's ultimately what this is. Does there need to be some legal clarity? I remember in 2008, part of it was just done as a way to sort of take some attention away from candidate Obama because of what the conservatives were trying to, what some were trying to do about his citizenship and his birth certificate stuff when Claire McCaskill had the U.S. Senate pass a resolution saying John McCain's eligible. Does there need to be actual legal clarity? Does Congress need to step in? Does it need to be in the Constitution? What's necessary here?
Well, I think what you'll end up with, and I think what we're getting to already, is a consensus that develops through things like the resolution relating to John McCain. You'll have editorialists in the major media outlets. You'll have discussions like this one in which it's going to be hard to find somebody on the opposite side. And so you'll have this consensus that develops in an organic way and in a way that doesn't require the courts to get involved. So the only reason that there's an argument here even is that the courts have not definitively resolved this question, and that's something they're unlikely to do. So there'll always be just a little bit of a door opening for political opponents to make these kinds of arguments in cases like this, but it's really just a little bit of a door opening. I think that Ted Cruz's candidacy is going to be decided on other grounds. I think there'll be some general acceptance that he's eligible to serve for the presidency.
But you don't think legal clarity? Well, somebody will file a lawsuit, probably forcing the courts to take this
Somebody will file a lawsuit, but the courts won't touch this with a 10-foot pole. The technical ground that they get rid of these cases on is something called standing. So there's no individual that has standing to bring this claim. The courts really don't like to get involved in cases like this that are a little too politically sensitive, especially if it's clear that the question's working itself out through other channels. And that's what happened in the McCain case. Everybody was, in the end, everybody was on board that he was eligible for the presidency, notwithstanding the fact that he was born outside of the
But it does sound like what you're saying is the only way somebody would have standing would be after a person whose eligibility was in question assumed the office.
Even then, and maybe especially then, no court would get involved with it. Really, the only institution where this question might be sort of appropriately vetted would be the Electoral College. And assuming that the Electoral College followed the will of the people, I don't think that any court would entertain the case.
Peter Spiro, a citizenship law expert. Thanks for coming.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.